Thanks for the introduction, and thanks everybody for attending this morning, the third and final. Look, today I'll be touching on the important considerations to improve your lithium exploration targeting based on the CSA experience. We're covering really not just the last few years of intense exploration, which we've all seen, but the team has decades of experience. That's not moving. Okay. So today I'm really presenting on behalf of a very talented colleagues listed here. They've been very busy assisting clients exploring for LCT pegmatites. Looking at a special mention to Ralph Porter, sitting up in there in the middle, who really assisted with this presentation. Ralph has a deep experience with 20 years lithium experience. So look, exploration for lithium has dramatically increased in recent years with the move to electrification and demand for lithium-ion batteries. There's lithium supply and exploration challenges. So unlike other battery metals, lithium has limited recyclable resources. We cannot recycle our way out of the shortage. Lithium mines are limited, production is constrained, unlike many of the other battery metals. Existing lithium production is limited to a few mines that previously produced specialty metals, and therefore lithium production sort of needs to catch up with current demand, which can only happen through exploration. The exploration boom for LCT pegmatites, we believe, is different to other booms, as the knowledge base is new to the broader exploration community. Therefore, the learning curve for the geologists in the field is steeper, which is also quite exciting. Still, time is of the essence. Everyone's under the pump. We need to understand whether our project is a discovery or barren pegmatites to allow us to move on to the next project in the portfolio in the most efficient way possible. This presentation looks at the critical considerations for exploring for LCT pegmatites, focusing on Western Australia and based on the CSA global experience. So on this map, which will be familiar to most of us, it shows the terrains where lithium projects are hosted and the most exploration is undertaken. It's the Archean terrains. The Archean terrains in WA are clearly highly prospective, with some of the world's largest lithium-bearing pegmatite deposits. Although we're starting to see a wider geographic spread in the Yilgarn, associated with some of the relatively thin pegmatites, and some Proterozoic belts, such as the Gascoyne region, are demonstrating potentially economic LCT deposits. So what is a pegmatite, and how do they form? So the definition of a pegmatite, according to London 2008, is an igneous rock, mostly of granitic composition, and distinguished from other igneous rocks by an abundance of crystals with skeletal, graphic, and other strongly directional growth habits, and or a prominent zonation of mineral assemblages. Any one of these textural attributes might be sufficient to define a pegmatite. They tend to occur together, and the general model for pegmatite formation is the crystallisation of late-stage melts that evolve from a parent magma. So the exploration considerations. Exploration for pegmatites is challenging, as not all pegmatites fields are mineralised for lithium, and even if they are, it does not mean they'll be exploitable. Fertile granites are a requirement, and these include the periluminous to metaluminous granite rocks, which are mainly Monza granites. Intrusion emplacement is typically at depths of 7 to 8 kilometres. They may be located below you or in other tenements nearby, but they do need to be nearby. Pegmatites from a common granite source rarely occur alone, but occur in groups that are typically zoned. starting from simple pegmatites close to the source granite to more distal fractionated and mineralised pegmatites. The host rocks are often upper green schist to amphibolite metamorphic grade. It is therefore important to understand early on in the exploration program where you might be in the overall granite pegmatite mineral system. So starting with the source rocks. These are typically late orogenic fractionated metaluminous to periluminous granites and montanites, and probably form as mid-crustal melts, although their other exotic source granites may also have similar compositions. Their fractionation state is indicated by a range of whole rock geochemical indices. A source granite, depending on exposure level, may be recognised by the presence of two micas, muscovite and biotite, and garnet, and the presence of lithium micas and or tourmaline. The source rocks for granite melt is reflected in the rare element content in the pegmatites. The host rocks and the role of structure. In general, our observation in WA is that greenstone belts are better hosts than granites and gneiss due to greater permeability. In granites and gneisses, pegmatite melt is forced to disperse through a myriad of fractures, resulting in numerous small pegmatites, which can be uneconomic. Host rock temperatures at the time of melt generation is also important, as it impacts on how far the fractionated pegmatite melt can move away from the source granite. And this impacts the location of the Goldilocks zones. There will be more on fairy tales later. The size of the source granite, and hence the volume of evolved fractionated melt, also has a significant impact on developing mineralised pegmatites. Structural preparation has a significant impact on whether pegmatite melt can form large pegmatites. And host rock porosity can impact on how far lithium and other elements may leak out of the pegmatite. So the Goldilocks zone, a fairy tale or just misunderstood? It's a great buzzword, not too hot, not too cold, just right. The distance of the Goldilocks zone from a source granite is largely dependent on a number of factors, including volume of source melt, content of source melt, host rock temperature, and structural permeability. 3D architecture is important. Are you above? Are you to the side? And the structure is critical. Are they permissive or tight? It isn't bad to look at buffer zones around fertile intrusions as a starting point, but if you're above the fertile granite, you will not see it. So keep an open mind and build the mineral system. So pegmatites do come in all shapes and sizes. They can occur over large areas of several square kilometres. They comprise multiple pegmatite bodies with strong structural controls on their size, shape and distribution. Pegmatite bodies can vary dramatically in size and shape. There are a variety of pegmatite types in a group. They can be barren to mineralised, small to large, strongly zoned to weakly zoned. And small pegmatites can hide large deposits. Mount Marion, Kathleen Valley, cropped out as thin, moderately dipping sills that overlay large pegmatites at depth. So geochemistry for lithium exploration, and this is an interesting topic. I guess mostly aware that using lithium analytical values as an indicator of pegmatite mineralisation, potentially has several complications. Lithium is highly mobile, easily weathered, and leached out of outcropping spodumene and other aluminosilicates. Lithium substitutes readily into muscovite species with a progressive increase from lithium muscovite up to 3.75% Li2O to lepidolite 7.26% Li2O, and similarly into biotite, so zimbaldite. There are over 100 lithium minerals that host lithium. Obviously, you don't need to know them all. It's Barren versus mineralised pegmatites. So Barren pegmatites and zone mineralised pegmatites pretty much look the same if the inner zones are not exposed, or some key minerals such as beryl or tourmaline are not visible. So how do you determine which is which? And there are a number of different ratios in key minerals such as muscovite, K-feldspar, garnet, columbite, tantalite that can provide fractionation information. In our experience, the fractionation state of blocky K-feldspar using the potassium-rubidium ratio is fairly robust in terms of identifying potentially mineralised pegmatites. However, care must be taken in collecting a clean sample without potassium contamination. In addition, if required, the absolute rubidium value can be used as an indicator, or proxy, if there are issues with K content, but it's probably not preferred. But also beware, pegmatites are very common. In your tenement, less than 5% of your pegmatites may contain minerals of interest, and less of these may be large enough to exploit. So therefore, it's important to quickly and accurately target only the most prospective pegmatites. Exploration tools and techniques. So detailed aerial imagery is very useful to locate outcropping pegmatites as they're quite resistive, particularly the silica-rich core zones. Larger pegmatites may show as magnetic lows, whether they're outcropping or not, and if outcropping will then also have a potassium radiometric signature. Geological mapping and identification of source granites, if possible, and identification of suitable host rocks is important. Geological mapping should include collecting samples for chemical and mineralogical characterisation to help establish the pegmatite type and fractionation state. Handheld devices such as portable XRD are great, but a PXRF is also useful for collecting key ratio information if your budget doesn't extend that far. Using the fractionation state and mineralogy of the pegmatites to vector to mineralised pegmatites, and a good structure interpretation is essential. With soil and auger geochemistry as exploration tools, they need to be carefully considered. If you cannot see pegmatite outcrops, then reconsider your objectives, as mineralised pegmatites have limited geochemical dispersion halos and lithium values may be related to other sources, such as micas and clays, which can result in false positives. Elements such as rubidium, cesium, tantalum and niobium can be used as proxies for lithium to assist in interpreting geochemistry. So some takeaway thoughts. Exploring for pegmatites is not straightforward. We need to develop an understanding of the source granites and host rocks. Identifying the granite source rock requires, if possible, investigation of the intrusive mineralogy and geochemistry. Garnets and 2 mica granites can be helpful indicators. High-grade metamorphic rocks, upper green schist amphibolite, proximal to major regional shear zones are fertile hunting grounds. So Pilkingora, Greenbushes, Mount Marion, Kathleen Valley, Manor are all examples. Granite gneiss hosted pegmatites tend to be thinner and discontinuous due to the tight host rock, though worldwide there are some exceptions. Develop an understanding of the mineral system in 3D. Understand where you are in a pegmatite mineral system using key minerals and key fractionation data. Lithium is not a good geochemical tool on its own due to its mobility, several host rock minerals, and lithium readily substituting into mica species. So mineral identification is important. Understand and developing geochemical ratios such as the potassium rubidium and or rubidium as a proxy for fractionation is relatively simple but effective approach. And finally, there's no substitute for time on the ground, mapping and classifying pegmatites. And that's just a little bit about me, and CSA Global and ERM. And feel free to reach out anytime with any questions. And I guess just finally, we've got a pop-out booth out in the middle area there. Some of the CSA team, myself, Ralph Porter and others will be there during the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liam.